Let me formally introduce the space. My name is Rosangel Perez, and welcome to our Monday night New York Freedom Fighter X Space, which is co hosted with Mark for NY, who is with me today, and Cozy's Wellness. He's on listener mode today. Um, so, Cozy, we hope that you feel better. The flu has been smacking us down. It took me down for about 2 weeks. So, if my voice is a little bit weird, it's because I haven't really been speaking much. I've been taking lots of rest, but I'm really excited about our show this evening. And let me see. Oh, great. Uh, Fuzz is on and Andrea. I will be introducing the both of you momentarily after Mark introduces himself and welcomes everyone to the space. I want to start today with a quote that reminds me of you guys who are here with me, with us tonight, and the OG freedom fighters, and also the OG freedom fighters that we may not ever really even know much about, all the people who have been for decades and decades tirelessly carrying on the message that has collectively brought us all here today, maybe from different paths, journey, and paths. But in this present moment, we're here doing God's work. And maybe it looks a little bit different from different vantage points, but everybody's work is so important. And the people that we are spotlighting tonight, which is Andrea. And forgive me, sister, you'll correct me when we speak. Is it Biro or Biro? I'm not sure. Um, and you'll correct me when I introduce you to formally in a second. And then Craig MightyFuzz, who is an hermano in the freedom movement that I feel so much respect for and admiration. I mean, I have personally a lot of respect and admiration for a lot of people who are even listening into the space tonight. Um, when I contemplate heroes, when I contemplate people who fearlessly stood up and spoke up and are nonstop contributing with action in the best ways that they know how, in the ways that they are tapping into a subject matter that most of us, maybe especially in the days of now, we should know more about what's going on with our Constitution, our rights, empowering ourselves to know more about this book. And our brothers here tonight, they are very acquainted with this to the point that they've taken Adams to court. And not only Adams, but a few others. And it is my intention tonight to get into that and also to talk about their historic case um, versus Adams. So we're going to talk about all that. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mark for NY. Welcome, Mark. Mark.
Yeah, I thought I unmuted myself, but I guess not. So anyway, hello, fellow freedom-loving Americans. Mark Friend Y here. I'm a little bit under the weather as well. Um, loading up on CDs and zinc and all that stuff. I would definitely wanted to be a part of this episode, so I'm gonna try to stay on as long as possible. But those people get their flu shots and every other shot that the big pharma tells them to take, and then they're over there shedding all over the place, getting other people sick. But we know the deal already. So it's good to have the fellow freedom fighters from New York du jour here. Very, very grateful for the work that you guys put in doing the legal battles that you guys have done. So, I mean, you guys are the stars of the show today anyway, so there's no need for me to be talking as much as I normally do. So, I'll pass the mic back over to Cafecito, and we'll take it away. Let's get things rolling. Cafecito, I can't hear you. I don't know if
Oh,
you're.
thank you so much. Welcome to the show, Craig and Andrea. And if I can start with Craig, if you can briefly introduce yourself to those of our listeners who may not be familiar with you and your work, and then we have questions, so we'll start getting into it. And I'd also like Andrea to also introduce herself and answer the question too. Thank you.
What's going on, family? My name is Graig. I go by MightyFuzz. I'm a New York native, 40 years, producer, business owner, and in 2020, like everybody else in this movement, seeing what was going on in New York City, I felt that there had to be a call to action, and I got to meet a lot of the faces that are in this chat today. And in that progression, meeting at the New York Freedom Rally and networking with great patriot-loving Americans, I got to work with the du jour. And I seen that the New York du jour was going about fighting this battle, like Cafecito said, in a different way, which was the lawful way, learning your rights and not leaning on just a politician or a public servant, rather, but actually knowing your rights and stepping up. So that's kind of the introduction of how I got with the New York du jour. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea?
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Andrea Biro. Um, I'm an immigrant to this country, mother to a special needs child. I've been going toe to toe with the administration for I'm not even sure how many years. It came to a tipping point during the religious repeal. Um, and I was part of that movement where we provided all of our personal information to attorneys, hoping they'll save the day. And after a while, it became the same fight, the same arguments, the same losses. And I agree with many of those in the New York du jour when they said it was basically we were basically following the definition of insanity, which was we were doing the same thing, hoping for different results. And during that, after the repeal went through, and I personally spoke to Jacob when we reported majority of Albany for conflict of interest violations. And they looked at me and they said, we only have 3 investigators and you must be part of those people. The system was not going to help us. And with every slap in the face and everything that's going around us, we came across a new different way to fight it, which broke the insanity cycle. And I'm not saying it was an easy route because there's a lot of reading, a lot of education, but it's also the most freeing process ever, which allows you to stand your ground and argue lawfully in their courts where you have them stumped and you're able to basically assert yourself properly. And once, and that's why I'm extremely proud to be part of the New York du jour. That's why I'm also extremely proud to be part of the Kings County Committee of Safety. And we will keep going forward and fighting lawfully. And if we need to, we'll incorporate, whatever we can, make sure that the unalienable rights of the men and women are protected and the constitutional rights that they're not supposed to overstep. That line is not drawn in the sand, but the cement. And back to you, Cafecito.
Thank you. If you could take us back to that time, right? Because I'm listening to the both of you, and I had the opportunity to kind of shadow a little bit in one of the times that you guys went and would do research, and it was still during the COVID times. And I remember feeling all kinds of strange sensations in my body up until even the one like, should we even be here? Are we going to be in trouble? And contemplating back that moment now as I sit here today, I'm thinking, wow, like those questions are still sort of programming. Like, why was I even afraid to be walking into a building in the city, right? With you guys, we weren't doing anything wrong, but the programming during COVID, where when I say the world went dark and a lot of people who maybe had a little knowledge, a lot of teachers, a lot of faith people, a lot of people who had very specific skill sets that I assumed would step up to the plate or maybe look for ways a lot of those people went MIA in every category. And I'm not here to criticize those people. That's not my point. My point is to highlight the bravery of all of you as you're facing different personal challenges during those days, but yet you're being called towards a greater purpose. And I'm wondering if you could sort of, whether it's you and or Fuzz, if you can kind of walk us back to those beginnings, and what was that defining moment where as a group you decided, not only are we going to integrate and really learn this, but we're going to take further actions. Because for some people who do not understand this subject matter, this is almost like another language. So whoever would like to respond.
I'll go first. Um, the main thing is that I think as a society, we've been groomed to believe that the government is an authority. And I didn't understand it when Jeannie or Andrea used to speak publicly at the New York Freedom rallies. I would totally be with the fluoride stare, staring at them like, well, what are they talking about? Who gave this woman the authority to speak on a stage and say that we have the power, that we tell the government what to do? And after listening to what they were saying, I realized that, oh, this whole country was founded on that. And it's not like we're supposed to be looking for a leader to be our king, to be our authority. We're looking for a public servant that represents we the people. And I realize after listening time and time again that we are not behaving like that. We are behaving like we are slaves to a system, and wherever they take us, we're at the whim of their lead. And to this day, I still feel that way. And this is how they play us in this thing called democracy, where it's the 51 controls the 49. And they control us through way of media using propaganda, red team, blue team. And I kind of started to see through that myself. A lot of prayer, obviously, a lot of studying, and great mentors like Andrea, like Jeannie, Scott. There's so many at the jour, and they were saying something way different. It wasn't to me. Like you, Cafecito. You keep saying it, and it's beautiful that it's all connected. It's not one or the other, but there's still some old programming that we have to work through. There's programming that we believe that we're going to get a guy in, and he's going to lead us, even if he's doing what we want him to do. There's still a responsibility and accountability on we the people. And once we get that, guys, once we get that down, and we are led by knowledge, responsibility, accountability, we will see the change. We will see the freest America, and that's what the country was founded on, and that's what we the people are. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to just get right to a specific question, if you don't mind. Who like came up with the idea and had the knowledge, or how did it come about that you guys had the knowledge and the balls, so to speak, to sue Mayor Adams? Like who? I mean, I knew when I first saw Du jour was like in 2021, and Gina Vega was like coming around with some type of petition or something to sign, and I talked about my campaign and everything, and then I met everyone else, and then other people from the freedom fighter movement got recruited into the jour. But I know it's very knowledgeable people on the law. None, most of you guys are not lawyers, but somehow you managed to come by and just like a David versus Goliath battle. So could you, one of you, tell us about that?
Um, to be completely honest, we stumbled upon the remedy in the city charter by accident. Our original intentions was to put the county clerk on notice for not recording our notices that we sent to the mayor and make it a public record. And we stumbled upon a remedy called the summer inquiry in the city charter that allows you to not sue, but hold accountable public servants if they violate their duty. right? And as we were reading this, I'm like, this is basically it. This is what we want. We want them to be held accountable. We don't want taxpayer money, because what happens is most people, when they sue the mayor, you have to sue the city, right? Which is basically just taking money out of your left pocket and putting it into your right pocket, because that's all that happens. You're holding no one accountable. No one's really paying except for the people. So the people are basically paying themselves back from their own money. We didn't want that. We wanted somebody to be held accountable. And so we decided to go forward with the summer inquiry. This was pretty much a shot in the dark. Um, to be honest, it was a learn as you go. It was on the job training, because we were entering the legal field. It wasn't so much the lawful field, we were entering the legal field. None of us are lawyers, right? I have some legal experience, so I kind of was able to somewhat realize what's, where and how, kind of, for the most part. But we weren't lawyers. So, and we found this remedy, and we decided, okay, as we were going to meet, we discussed it. We're like, we agreed on it. We needed the five men and women, because men and women can bring your public servants into their court, and you had to be specific which court, the claims you raised, and what violation, how they violated their duty. And we decided to take an approach that nobody's argued yet, which is, we didn't argue the policy. We didn't argue that he wrote the EO. We didn't argue that he wrote the emergency executive order. We argued that he stepped outside the scope of his authority by what he wrote in the EO regarding direction of enforcement. And that was something that was not argued in any tort case, Article 78 case, or any other cases that were brought into the courts.
I know there was a hearing recently. I didn't get a chance to tune in. Could you tell us a little bit about what happened so far and what the status is?
The one that's been publicized was the appellate court argument, the oral argument in the appellate court, because we had to appeal the lower court's decision, because the lower court dismissed it on so many different ways that it made it look like the mayor did have authority to basically direct enforcement on the men and women. And if for nothing else, we needed to appeal it to correct the record, because he did not have the authority to direct enforcement on the men and women. You cannot delegate authority you don't have, right? And since the city charter never allowed him to enforce anything or create any, or even direct anything as a matter of law, he can't then tell someone else to do it. So the lower court basically said, well, he had a right to create these EOs. He had a right to implement key to the city because of Executive Law 20 and Executive Law 24 and the mayoral powers in the city charter. But none of them gave him that specific power that he was using, which was directing enforcement on the men and women, to then have us comply with key to the city, right? And the lower court, the way that they dismissed it, made it seem like he did. So we had to appeal it. And so when we appealed it, what's been publicized was the oral argument that I did at the appellate court in the first department.
So correct me if I'm wrong. They filed a motion to dismiss, and that motion was granted before it was actually in trial. And then you guys went to the Second Circuit, the appellate court, and then now you're waiting on a ruling for that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the New York County Supreme Court dismissed it after an order of show cause. And then we had to go to the first department. It wasn't a federal case, it was a state case, so we went to the first department for the oral arguments.
Okay, and it's just pending a decision at this point?
Yep.
And then if you don't get the decision that you want, you're going to continue to appeal to the next court?
It depends on what they decide. Even if it gets dismissed, but the record gets corrected, we'll probably let it be. Because at this point, we just want to make clear that even if they dismiss it on technicalities, the original claim of him not having the authority still remains. So even if we don't want to continue it to keep going higher and higher, someone else can always pick it up, correct those little technical errors, and then proceed on behalf of the people, right? using the same evidence, the same claims of him overstepping his authority and be able to win. Does that make sense?
Yep. How could other people get involved with the Jure organization?
Fuzz, you're better at PR than me. I'm gonna punt it to you.
What's going on, guys? So essentially, you have to get involved with your county. So each county has a du jour, and if you guys are, for the people that are in New York City, or New York State, rather, you have to get with your county and sign with your county du jour. What this basically does is this is the checks and balances of the government. It's always was built like this. We just kind of stepped away from it. We're not doing our duty, so we have a runaway government that's doing what they want because there's nobody doing the checks and balances. So this is what the du jour does. The committees of safety do. The other, hold on one second. Yeah. So we have to essentially just sign up with the du jour. Every person that signs up has to obviously do their responsibility to learn the knowledge, get informed. This is not a like, all right, we're cheering on the du jour. The du jour is going to do this. I kind of seen, if anybody's familiar with the Brunson case, where there's a lot of parallels, there's a lot of differences, but there's also a lot of parallels with our case. It's historic that it's we, the people, holding the government accountable, right? They were doing it on a federal level. We were doing it on a state level. So with that, it's not like, okay, we're just going to see how the du jour does it. The more people, so let's say you ask about the our case, if it gets dismissed, then what? Then Mark does it, then Cafecito does it, then Cozy does it, then New York Freedom Rally does. Like this is how we got to hold our government to the oath they take. That's the importance of the oath, and we're not doing that. So even if we get dismissed, we get shot out of the water. The next person steps up and holds the government accountable.
But doesn't it establish a precedent, like the actual like ruling? I mean, you have a certain time limit to continue the appeals process, but won't, like, if somebody else files something similar, won't they just do the motion based on this ruling for on such and such date? Wouldn't it just automatically be dismissed again because of the precedent established?
It depends on what the appellate court says. So if they create specific parameters linked to the lower court, then those technicalities can be corrected. So if like the next group of 5 files and correct and inserts those parameters that the appellate court ruled, even if they use the lower court's precedent, right, of it being dismissed for like a slew of inconsistencies, they can always respond using the appellate court ruling and say, no, they erred. The only thing they agreed on was these two. We meet the requirements, move forward.
Gotcha.
So
I thought that's what you meant earlier when if they did that, then you would have gotten what you wanted and not need to continue. But just wanted to clarify, I guess. All right, I'll pass it back to Cafecito if she has any questions.
Yeah, I've got like clarifying questions. So, throughout this process, what have you learned? Let's say that maybe the common folks in New York that are not a part of like or don't have an understanding like you guys do of like our common rights. So when you speak about, oh, we've learned that this elected official has not been held to their oath, if you can speak more about that, for example.
okay, so one, and I know this is going to be burdensome to a lot of people, you actually have to know their job better than they do, right? Which means if you're within the 5 boroughs, you have to look up your city charter. You have to. It's a searchable document, luckily. So you can look up exactly which department you're looking into or which public official you're looking into. Not every elected official in New York City has a bond, only specific ones, and there are specified amounts for them as well. So that also created some hindrances here and there. That's one. Two, once you know their jobs and their box, and you look at what they're doing, you then know whether or not they're working within that box or not. Then that box is compared to the state and the federal constitution, because the federal and the state constitution are supposed to be parallel, right? They're supposed to mirror each other. Neither one can be overly restrictive, and it has to make sure that they remain in their box, right? A lot of people make the assumption, I have constitutional rights, and you really don't. You don't have constitutional rights. If you had constitutional rights, you would not be allowed to breathe because it's not listed in the Constitution. You wouldn't be allowed to eat because it's not listed. So you don't have constitutional rights. I try to tell people, think of the Constitution as like a sampler platter. This is the gist of it, but there's so many more things you're allowed to do. We're just listing these so the government knows where the line is and what they're not supposed to overstep. And so that's basically, the Constitution is pretty much like a wall between them and us. So once you compare the charter to those two documents, you then realize which one is restrictive or not aligned. If it's not aligned, it's null and void, because you can't conflict the Constitution. If you conflict the Constitution, which has been reaffirmed on multiple cases, all the way from SCOTUS down to lower courts, that basically state that the law of the land is the United States Constitution. So if that is the law of the land, right, and that is the guiding force of our legal system, you can't have other documents that contradict it. So always keep
The
that in mind.
supremacy clause, basically.
Well, the supremacy clause comes into effect if a state becomes overbearing or too restrictive. Then the federal can step in and pretty much tell the state government, you need to back off. Aside from that, the way that the way that the U.S. originally was formed was each state was its own nation. So New York could run the way New York wants to run. Ohio could run the way Ohio runs. Neither state needed to get approval from each other to run the way they needed to. The only approval they needed was from the men and women. That was it.
I find all of this so fascinating, and I appreciate that the both of you are taking time to explain these things to us. Uh, how has this process fortified or maybe even changed you? Craig, let's start with you.
I mean, a great question, and honestly, it's changed everything. My whole outlook. You guys got to remember, I come from defending Trump in 2020 and seeing all my liberal friends lose their mind. I apologize if there are any liberals on the call. And just defending him and seeing, like, I was there at January 6th. The mandates happened in 2020 in New York City, and I watched city workers losing their jobs and people getting shot and sick. I have family members that are sick. And I just was like, something has to give. Something has to change. And just learning this stuff, this education, has changed how I go about looking at politics. Now I what I've learned, the education that I learned, I'm not looking at people like red or blue anymore. I once did, and now I don't. I try to honestly meet them at where they're at and teach them their God-given rights and teach them that if we don't step up together collectively and not be divided, we will lose. We will lose our rights to the government because we kind of relinquish them to them and just we're at the helm of where they want to go. So it's really beautiful how the country was founded. It's really beautiful what the difference between the republic and the democracy is. But it's an action. It's not just words. People say, "Oh, I like the Constitution," but they can't tell me the Bill of Rights. I think it's important that every man, including the people on this call, learn that, know it. You have to know these things, not because they're your rights, like Andrea said, so you can hold them accountable to the contract, the Constitution. But we the people. It's not we the politicians, it's we the people. So I think once you step into that power, that God-given power, this country will change totally 180.
Thank you, Andrea.
Um, it's a loaded question for me because, like I said, I've been going toe to toe with elected officials for a while now. Um, so I went through the process of lobbying, begging, trying to get politicians onto the ballot, realizing how corrupt our board of elections actually is. Um, all the way to where we had first started the lockdowns, and I was at the May Day protest in 2020, May 1st at City Hall Park, and there was maybe like 25, 30 people there, and I swear to God, the NYPD treated us like they needed, like, I don't know, the National Guard there to herd us out. And then, we went back a week later and there was like six of us. And please explain to me why six people need 250 uniforms to contain us. Why? And luckily by then I was already reading and understanding what square I stand on. So I was allowed to prevent a lot of people from getting legally detained, kidnapped, or as everybody else would call it, arrested. Um, and keep myself from being put in handcuffs. Because every time I go to one of these events, in the back of my mind, I have to worry whether or not I'm going to go home to my son. I'm a single parent of a special needs child. I have to go home to him. And so the education that I received by reading and rereading and rereading, because it's not just a one-time read, because I guarantee you the first time you read it, you think you understand it, and then you go back and you're like, I didn't know it said that. Oh, shoot. You're always going to pick up something more. And knowing how to stand on my square to protect my son and to protect my rights and basically push back is the most empowering feeling ever, 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 especially, you know, and a lot of people fail to realize what it's like. I'm a 5 foot white little girl, girl. I don't even know. At this point, I look like a 12-year-old boy. But I've had my experiences with uniform officers where I would come from work and working in a male dominant industry, coming home with the guys, and I would be basically labeled as, a streetwalker because there's no other reason why one woman should be in a car with four men. And so the programming that you need to respect authority goes back as far as you first stepping into their school systems. Because if you think back to your DOE education, right? You're basically taught that you need to respect your teacher, you need to listen to your teacher, because if you don't, what happens? You go to the principal's office. Even if what you did was not wrong and you knew it was not wrong and your teacher just had a bad day, you got sent to the principal's office, right? When you got sent to the principal's office, that that anxiety, while they made you wait out there, contemplating, fearing of what their determination is going to be, right? So slowly those seeds of somebody that holds a position above you, it's all of a sudden has more importance and more authority to make decisions over your life, is embedded from day one. And the school system is the most restrictive indoctrination camp that there is. It is the only place you need to raise your hand to ask to go to the bathroom, and even that is determined by somebody else of whether or not you should be allowed to go or not. And if they won't let you, you have to hold it. So, like Fuzz was saying, we were already slowly programmed from our youth to yield to people, to persons in position of power, right? And so when you go from that mindset, you have to literally unschool yourself. So whenever somebody joins the assembly, we never ever expect them to go from everyday life, everyday thinking to lawful. It is a deschooling process. It is a rebirth and then a relearning experience completely. And sometimes some people pick it up quicker, some people pick it up slower, and it's still a process. I've been with the assembly since they started at the end of 2019, early 2020, and I'm still learning. And there are people that have been learning for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're still learning. And it's amazing because when you collaborate with people that have been doing this for so much longer than you, and you sit down and you discuss these things, and then you realize, that there's things, that you have in common, or you bring new light to the table because you are looking at it in a new light, because it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving, and it constantly affects everyday men and women differently.
That was such an amazing response. I have to say that I have so much admiration for you for many reasons, not just for your courage and your bravery, but for all the reasons that you had personally in your realm to just like, I can't do this. This is just too much. My life is too much, and especially during that time where most people, um, the programming of fear was too overwhelming, where a lot of our human beings, brothers and sisters, they're still not back yet, and they're almost like casualties of what we went through in that sense. And I really pray, this is one of the reasons that I felt always called to host conversations of like these, of different subject matter, but all with the core of how do we use what we're learning about being boots on the ground, about living here in New York, about loving that we live here, but knowing that the people who are running the city, they're obviously, when we see year after year, our subways feeling less safe, corruption, like you said, like who the heck can trust the election process? We hosted a conversation of a few weeks ago in which the woman Marley was letting us know just how much they were uncovering that's broken in the system, right? And it's enough to make a person just want to Netflix and chill. So what's your main motivating factor every day through all that?
My son, my son, because I'm leaving the world to him. And I want to make sure that he can walk down the block, he could go to work, he can get what he needs. He's able to provide for himself without having to yield anything to them. That's my motivation. And if in the process it makes the life of every other man and woman better, that is an awesome side effect.
Oh, that's pretty badass. That's pretty badass. Fuzz, anything you'd like to add? And then I'll pass it on to you, Mark.
Yeah, I just want to say it's been an honor watching these women at the du jour. I'm 2 years in. Even my wife, Jeannie, Joy, everybody at the du jour jam. If you listen, and Monica, I see you. There's a lot of members here, and just watching them work, and just they don't do it for fanfare. Everything Andrea is saying, I can co-sign. I know for a fact it's all true. That's why, like, a lot of times when I speak on the du jour, I get very passionate about it because these women are lionesses. Like, they are really about this. It's not about fanfare or attention. They just want to make change for their children. And some of the members have children that have been affected already. And they're still fighting. And Cafecito, you said it. It's like they could easily just Netflix and chill. And it's inspiring to me. They have been my inspiration. Just I gotta protect this group, and Kevin will tell you how protective I am of the group, and it's for this reason because I know they truly in their hearts want to make this change, and I truly believe God is leading them.
I believe that too, Mark.
Yeah, I was raising my hand before to see if I could use the bathroom. That was a powerful statement. I just wanted to make the joke of that. But yeah, I mean, we talk about college campuses being indoctrination camps for a reason, and we talk about how doctors are the most indoctrinated because that what they learn in school has to be correct. There's no way that they're wrong because they're a doctor, and they learned this, so this has to be true. There's no way that what they were taught in school is wrong, and you have to listen to us because we know what's best for you. And it's going back to what I said at the top of the program with the flu shots and the vaccines, which we all know about, so I'm not going to get into all that. But even on the lower level, somebody could have a degree in whatever and they just feel like they're above you. And I saw this recently in a comment debating with somebody about the paper straws being banned that Trump is doing, and it's like, oh well, why don't they do with bamboo? Or I'm like, bamboo is expensive. It's like he's not mandating plastic. You could still use other things. He's just getting rid of the paper straws that are with glue and chemicals that are dissolving in your drink that are not healthy. How could you not agree with that? And the one thing I'll give her credit for that I was arguing is she put free dumb like our DUMB, which I thought was creative, but at the same time they have this perspective that all Republicans are like Duck Dynasty, beer drinking like rednecks or whatever, and not like the intelligent freedom fighters that they are. I know some of the people in the jour are Republicans, some of them are not, but just them, for example, like the level of intellect that you need to constantly fight these battles and come up with creative ways to fight the tyranny that a lot of Republicans and Democrats have been doing. A lot of us have done that without a college education, myself included. I ran for city, state, and federal office. I became a stockbroker at 19. I never went to college, but people want to go and have their degree and act like they're superior when they're really, all they're doing is listening to what CNN tells them and being brainwashed. But with that being said, I just want to remind everyone we air every Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Um, on X Spaces, also archived on Rumble. Please repost this so other people could hear the conversation and maybe follow us in the future. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments on the bottom right. If you feel like following any of us or all of us, click on our photo and click the follow button. Also, I know Amanda's here. I was going to pass it on to you momentarily, but since I plugged this show, I know Mighty Fuzz Young has his podcast. If you want to plug that real quick before we go and pass it on to Amanda momentarily. Craig.
Yes, sir. If you guys are interested, I do a podcast at Mighty Fuzz Podcast on Rumble and YouTube. We are just trying to get regular average people telling their stories. I find that a lot of people that are doing the work locally are very fascinating. Like Cafecito said, what drives them? What are they passionate about? Is it God? Is it they want to make change? And I really try to dial that in as we get better up in up in these episodes. So if you're interested, it's at Mighty Fuzz Podcast on Rumble and YouTube. My handle for X is at Mighty Fuzzcast. Thank you, guys.
And you can click on the photo to follow Mighty Fuzz. I added Amanda Joy as a speaker as well. I know she's been a freedom fighter with us for a long time, and also got involved with the jour. So, welcome to the program, Joy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if it connected. My Wi-Fi has been funny. But no, I just want to say one, thank you all, you and Ra and Cozy for hosting this, for giving a space to, give light to what the du jour has done, what the men and women of New York has done. Um, just like Fuzz, and I'm glad you're on, Fuzz, and Andrea, and anyone who's on du jour. I appreciate them to the utmost for, you know, being the men and women that they are, and teaching and learning and us growing together as an assembly, as a collective of men and women that want to see change. And they've been an inspiration. And just as a member of du jour, it's it's been a ride. It's been an experience. It's been a life-changing experience. It's been eye-opening. And just like, Andrea touched base on, it's starting with, indoctrination to opening your eyes that things aren't what they have appeared for so long, unlearning all of that, coming to terms to that, and then relearning, which we've all done for the last 5 years. Some people have been in it longer, have known about corruptions and things not going right for 20, 30 years, 40 years, even before that. There's, some people still around, they know what was going on back with, JFK and the things that were going on then. To now, we have so much to uncover. We have so much education to gain. Um, and it's been an incredible experience, and it's been like Fuzz touch base on, it's a spiritual experience at this point. And I know when I come on, I touch base on that, but I just wanted to give my testimony with being on the du jour, how incredible it's been. I've been a member for going on now 3 years. May will make 3 years, and I wouldn't change it. On a local level, like Fuzz was speaking about, you join your county, and you find out if your county has a committee of safety, which committee of safeties, they existed back when the Continental Congress was around, and we were the overseers. So you find your county, which we have 7 counties. um, and I wanted to list all those out, just so that information is available for anyone who's on here. We have Queens, Kings, we have New York County, which is Manhattan. Shout out to New York County. Monica is here. We have Bronx County, we have Suffolk, Nassau, and we also have the New York, New York County of Monroe. We're working on Richmond. If anyone who's here is in Staten Island, Richmond County, we're getting formed there, and once we're formed and have all these counties, there's so much more that we can do. And just like Fuzz touched base on, it's not just to join. You're going to give your 100%, and whatever your 100% is, you give that. And but it is work, because we don't yield that power over to anyone. We give them the benefit of the doubt that they will represent the men and women, that they will take their oath serious, and that they will be loyal to the people. But once there is a discrepancy, once there is, something that goes wrong, a violation, or anything that needs to be addressed, we as the people, we as counties, we step in and we point that out, and we give, you know, a heads up, like, hey, listen, this is what you became loyal to. This is who you took an oath to the people, and we want to correct it. So all of that has been, experience. All of that has been, such a great blessing, because just like Fuzz, I, was a Republican from before I could vote in high school, defending Republican, talking points, and was ridiculed and told, well, you can't be Republican because you're not rich, you're poor. And just the different nuances and even indoctrinations when it comes to politics, identity, and what side are you on. I endured that for more than 20 years, to then come around and really see that it never really was about which side you're on. It's about, are they going to uphold your rights? And when you realize what rights you have, when you realize, what God has given you, and that can't be taken away by the world, it can't be dictated by the world, it can't be delegated from any other man, because we are equal here. You step into a different realm, a different level of education. So that empowerment through education, through learning, you know, I, received as a member of the joy, as someone who, I thought there was no other way out. I'm a city worker. I was a DOE worker for 8 years to get terminated. My son, he never received his high school diploma because of COVID. There's so many things that went wrong, and with being arrested and detained and kidnapped, and just realizing how wrong all those things were. No matter which team I chose, there is a solution to it. There is something that the people can do, and how to correct the harms that are done to you. And all of that was obtained in the 2 almost 3 years with being on the assembly. It, even to touch base on what Andrea said, that, you could be there for in that space of learning and knowing the right way, and knowing, the law and lawful aspect for 20, 30 years. And you could come in and be around for 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, pick up on everything, and, go. And it just, when you realize there is nowhere left to go, you start to fight, because now it's fight or flight. And there is no option to fly. There is no running away from this, because it's in front of us. So, as a du jour member, and I encourage anyone, even if you just want to know more about it, there there's so much to learn from this. And, I appreciate the assembly for that. 100% appreciate them for that.
Well, I'm really grateful to that we're having this conversation tonight, because this is definitely one of those untapped resources that many New Yorkers don't know about. And I know that in my life, let's just say, pretend that I didn't care about this conversation, you know, everywhere I go, it finds me. And that's the way I know that God's always saying you can't ever forget that this is always a part of whatever you're doing, even if you're not magnifying it and you're not living it, but that you know that it's important, that you always make a place for it in your platforms. So I definitely appreciate all of you for what you do, because this, as I've sat and shadowed, I see how time consuming. This is an investment of time. And there aren't many folks like you guys, you know. So this is again why there is a high admiration point for what you guys do. And I'm curious, maybe Fuzz can, who can first respond to this. Where are you guys seeing, like, what's next? Because there's been a lot of times where we've seen, for example, Mayor Adams, um, communicate some things publicly, but at the same time, it kind of coincided with some of the things that you guys were doing, um, in actions, in taking him to court. And if you can elaborate a little bit more on that.
I'm going to let Andrea answer that question, but I just want to say, Cafecito, you articulated that so beautifully when you said that it just keeps calling you, and that's exactly it. I'm sure everybody here, the freedom fighters in this group today, have all felt like, I'm just going to act like I don't care about I'm going to go back into the matrix, and it just pulls you right back. I think that resonates with everybody here, and we still answer that call in our own ways with our God-given talents, and it's really beautiful. Andrea can expand on what the next step is.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to agree. You're always gonna, the truth will, the saying, the truth will set you free. So, no matter how many times you try to stick your head into the sand, at some point you're gonna have to come up for air, and when you do, it's still gonna be there. From everything that we're looking at, we're keeping an eye on the DOE situation. That is something that's been in the works for a while. We've had our eye. We originally started this whole thing to push back on the DOE situation in New York, and it worked for a while. And then we got sidetracked with everything else going on with COVID and all that, wonderful distractions going on, because more and more people were getting affected under false authorities and three-letter agencies. And, luckily, with the overturn of Chevron case, goes to show what we've been saying, which is no three-letter agency, has authority, and they can't be. But even prior to that, there was I believe, an FTC case that said no three-letter agency can be its own judge, jury, and executioner, which means if they create a resolution, it can't be the same agency that creates the resolution, and then rules on it as well as enforces it. So it can't be all three. But But luckily, with the SCOTUS overturn, it just makes it it makes it more stronger. So it allows people to fight back a little bit more now, because now they have a SCOTUS case, you know, well, their opinion. I have no idea how their opinion is going to sway the next time, depending on public perception. But we're keeping an eye on DOE, because especially with Trump saying that he's going to return the authority of education back to the state. And please keep in mind, the state is a corporation. They exist on paper, and no paper has authority over any of our sons or daughters. That's on us, right? We're the ones that are supposed to guide how they're taught. We're the ones that are supposed to tell the teachers, I want my child to learn how to read, write, do math properly. Can we concentrate of our kids knowing the difference between there, and there versus whether or not they should be, you know, which red or blue team they should be like advocating for? Because in my opinion, knowing there, and there, and your is a little bit more important, especially since the amount of ridicule I see in people posting that stuff on social media, embarrassing, um, you know, people. Like, if you're going to comment on someone, please use the proper wording. And, you know, there's a lot of things that they take out of schools. They're doing it. They're constantly changing up the way the curriculums are taught for even more of a separation between, you know, our sons and daughters and us, because we can't keep up with their new ways of teaching. And so we're keeping an eye on that. We're actually going to have a members meeting on it to see which direction we would like to go on that aspect. So, if you know, and if anybody has sons or daughters within the DOE system, and which is no, by the way, I'm sorry to say this, it's just no longer the Department of Education. Now it's the New York City Public Schools. If anybody has sons or daughters within the system, you'll realize that the letterhead has changed. So, yeah, they're coming out more openly with it now.
I didn't expect that we would talk a little bit about the education point, but since we're here, I will admit that it was what woke me up to the BS, right? When walking in, I'm like, why do public schools look like jails? Why are the colors so depressing? Why are, you know, the gates and the way you're walking in line, and like you said, those examples, like the bathroom examples, I have so many bathroom examples of ridiculousness of kids not being able to go because maybe their behavior was driving the teachers crazy, but they were sitting in class wiggling around like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And, you know, in hindsight, then hearing teachers as curriculums kept changing, how difficult it was for them to keep up with whatever the curriculum that were being given, or the new way to do math, or the new way to answer problems. And I remember trying to be like, you know, the auntie in some of the young kids' life, and I couldn't help them with any of this homework. And I would wonder, why are they doing this to the kids? Like, some of these, you know, situations feel like you're teaching them a longer route, or a place where it's almost breaking your brain. Like, it, that has translated that idea of what is the folks doing around us? Are they breaking our brains in everything? Law enforcement, like things that just don't make sense, where you really feel you're living in an insane asylum. People like yourselves root this in like common sense, you know, and that's also so important, as we have so many young people who are looking at the realm of adulthood, and they don't see authentic leaders like yourselves. I don't know if
Because we're not really leaders. Everybody leads themselves. We're more like guides. That's the best way I can say it. We're guides. We try to guide them to the information. We try to guide them to the powerful path. We try to guide them to self-sufficiency, where they're not reliant, right? But we've been slowly been taught to be reliant. We've been slowly taught to you know, accept our circumstances. And especially in New York City, I'm going to straight up, you know, like I said, I'm an immigrant from a socialist country. So I don't care. I'll throw it out there. Um, my whole family basically gave up everything, their livelihoods, their jobs, their degrees, right? Everything to make sure that I would come to a place where I was free. And now I'm seeing the same things happening that they went through. And I'm like, nah, it ain't happening. Not on my watch. I am not going to relocate my whole family just to get away from what we got away from, you know, in the 80s. So um, it's pretty much, it gets to the point where you either have to stand up and fight or you're going to get washed away with the tide. And a lot of people, especially New York City has slowly been turning into a two income mandatory household, which is completely different from a two, you know, it's known to the public, a two parent household. You don't need a mother and father in New York City to raise a child. You need two incomes in New York City to survive. And by slowly creating that environment where you are mandated to have two incomes to survive, right? That's how they were slowly implementing, you know, these restrictions, because now the potential of losing just one income, now you're going to be forced to be reliant on them, right, for trying to stand up for what you believe in. So it kind of conflicts. It's like, do I stand up for what I believe in? We lose an income, and now I'm going to have to force to beg the government that took away my right to be self-sufficient for them to basically assist me to be self-sufficient. So they stick you into a never-ending cycle of being reliant on them, right? And that's one of the ways that they've slowly been making it so that they can implement these policies where they're going to get minimal pushback because they know they have you by the income, by the purse strings, right? It's either you do what we tell you or you're going to be forced to go on public assistance. And if you go on public assistance, now you're going to have to beg, you're going to have to basically lower your standard of living. You're going to have to comply with whatever they tell you to do. Otherwise, they're not going to help you. Now you're potentially risking roof over your head, food on your table. You can't, you know, making sure your family is safe. So by you not complying with their demands, you're risking every fundamental right that you are basically, that is the only thing, the right to life, liberty, and prosperity, right? Just by them creating a situation. So they've been slowly doing it over years, right? And it's cyclical. It's cyclical because over the years they realized they have been doing sociological, basically sociological tests on us for I don't even know how long. And when they see a pattern that works, they basically file it away for the next time they need it. COVID, a lot of people are like, well, it was a pandemic. And in a way, that's true. Whether or not the actual little thing flying around was planned or not, that's not what I'm going to discuss. How they orchestrated the response, that is something they pulled out of a 1950s sociological um, paper when they did it using tuberculosis in New York City. And it followed the same exact pattern and they got the same exact compliance rate because once tested and true, they did it again. So everything that happens was already done. And this is why they also say those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And you don't you don't always need to go into major historical events to repeat it. Sometimes subtle things in history can lead up to major historical events to be repeated.
You know, I would add to that also having a strong spiritual foundation because a lot of people here have a very strong connection to God. And I have found that to be the case in many people who just keep going and because they know that something's not right and that there's something in their heart saying, you know, I got to just keep, you know, moving forward here. Mark.
Yeah, on that note, God definitely gives a lot of us the strength to keep fighting. Unfortunately, right now, I'm like I said at the top of the program, I've been under the weather the past couple of days. I'm gonna call it a night at this point. But New York du jour, I don't know who the admin is on the New York du jour X account, but they're on here. You can follow them, New York underscore du jour. You can click on the photo over there. New York Freedom Network is here to follow as well. Shout out to all the freedom fighters that joined us on the program. Cozy, I hope Cozy feels better as well. He's battling whatever flu or whatever the case may be. The show is going to continue. Obviously, I sent New York du jour a request to speak if whoever's on there wants to speak, and Kevin as well. I don't know if Rose Angel is going to have to send the request after I log off, but any of the freedom fighters that want to join in the conversation, since I'm heading out, feel free to keep the conversation going for another hour. We typically air for 2 hours every Monday from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you're following all of us. Any questions, leave it in the comments on the side. Thank you all again. I know Mighty Fuzz Young, I was supposed to be on the podcast a while back and it didn't happen, but it's all good. I'm glad we got to talk today. Keep up the good work, everyone, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Mark. Feel better. Take it easy.
Thank you.
And always great to have you on every Monday, and also Cozy. Yeah. um, Amanda.
Hi. No, I just wanted to plug in. So for the du jour, as communications officer. So we have New York du jour, New York underscore du jour on Twitter. We have New York underscore du jour on Instagram. We also have our website, nydujour.info. So anyone that wants to get in touch, reach out, send DMs, any questions, just to connect, you could reach us there. We also have an email, nyapublicrelations@protonmail.com. Also on our website, we have the information for joining, how to start a county committee of safety. You can also send in a questionnaire. You can see all of our information of things that we've done. Also on our Twitter and our Instagram, especially on Instagram, you can see the different calls of actions that we've done, all the education that we have in our highlights, all the videos and reels that we have posted with the different things that we've done, especially with the summary inquiry. I actually do, because a question was posed. Earlier this afternoon, Ra. And if I could just ask Andrea if she wanted to give maybe some clarity to that. Someone had asked me, it was under the video that New York Freedom Network posted with the response from DA. What the question was, what were the felonies or violations for Adams that Bragg was supposed to investigate? So that was something that I had read earlier, and not that I didn't know how to respond. I sent them, the information for tonight's space to, hop on. They can listen in. They can even drop the question. They said they wouldn't have been able to. So, I just wanted to get a little more in detail, because Andrea is so good with details. Um, what exactly were the violations or felonies, quote unquote, that Adams committed that warranted investigation?
Okay, well, first and foremost, when Adams extended the key to the city, he immediately violated his oath of office, which is a federal crime, and so that was felony number one. And what people fail to realize is that when you violate your oath of office as a public servant, you lose that office, you lose that title, right? That's an automatic. So basically, By violating your oath of office means if you enact something that goes against the documents that you took an oath to. And basically, if you look at it from a bigger aspect, if you look at the federal Constitution, Article 9, as many of you will know it as the Ninth Amendment, it basically encompasses every single right that you have as a man or a woman, whether it is listed or not in that document. It doesn't have to be listed for you to have it, right? And him directing enforcement on the men and women pretty much violated, if nothing else, that alone, which then violated his oath of office. By violating his oath of office, he then loses the protection of that office, which means he's no longer mayor. Now, after he renewed Key to the City, which was Emergency EEO1, he then continued to write other executive orders under the guise of being mayor, which many of you know in New York City, and I'm sure if we had law enforcement, they would know as well. That's a criminal offense, and it's a felony to impersonate, especially an elected official. And so that's what he was doing for even now. And those were the two main felonies that we listed, which was the violation of the oath of office, and then as well as impersonating a public servant in the first degree. So you had those. You also had other felonies, which was promoting an EUA product, which basically was mislabeled because he never finished the sentence. Every time he said it was FDA approved, there was an ellipses after that because it was only FDA approved for an EUA, which means emergency use authorization. And everybody knows you can't mandate an EUA product. You can't, whether it's the Nuremberg Code, whether it's in the United States codes. You also have other avenues within their system that protects you from that. They cannot mandate a product, especially one under which is basically mislabeled. The best way I can explain it, because under the federal codes, for a product to be termed a V, it has to prevent, treat, or cure. Those are the three requirements because it falls under biologics. It has to treat, prevent, and cure. Their product did not. Now we know this to be true, and even Adams did realize he made the slip up, because after we sent him the notices on that, it was no longer the COVID V to get, but the COVID shot. Very quickly changed his tune on how he called it on the media. This was one of the reasons why they call it the flu shot, not the flu V. Because you can't label something as a V product unless it treats, prevents, or cures. So we had that in there, which is a federal charge. So there were multiple. And then also as well state laws, penal codes, New York City administrative codes from the city charter. There was like a list and a half of violations, as well as the penalties for it. And we sent him that. We went through the administrative process. We sent him 3 notices. And every time we sent him a notice, we CC'd Braggs as well as other enforcement agencies on higher levels as well. And with Bragg, we put on the cover page to every CC that under 18 USC 4, they're required to act, right? But if they're not, here's their loophole. If they cannot or do not want to or should not, or whatever their reasoning is, they need to then move it to either another person or agency or man or woman who can. That was their duty. And it was very clearly specified on the cover pages of every CC that we sent out. And we sent out numerous, which is one of the reasons that's our biggest expenditures, is printing and mailings. Because every single item that gets mailed is mailed return receipt, certified mail, return receipt, not the electronic signature, but an actual green card that comes back that has their actual signature with ink, right? I don't care if it's the mailroom clerk, whatever. The notice itself basically states whoever takes this notice is equivalent as if the person who the notice is named and intended for, it's equivalent. So we make sure that's on the cover page. So it could be the mailroom clerk, it could be the secretary, it could be John Smith in the back room, and he needed an extra piece of mailing to make sure the table doesn't wobble. It don't matter. It's been accepted by that location. They're on the hook. So those are the three top off the top of my head. There are other ones as well. I believe the notices are also on our New York du Jour website, because I know our governor notices when Cuomo was in office was in there, is on our website. Blasio's notices are on there. It's on our website. Adams' notices, I believe, is on the website. We also have, I believe, a few templates. Those are going to be updated to make sure we encompass those who we need to. So I hope that answers that question.
That was good. Thank you. It was just I saw that, and you know, I'm aware of the notices, and I'm, educated, but there's times where, I have a hard time articulating the details. And we have times that, we've experienced as members on du jour, there's, mindsets, different mindsets. And in order to learn, there has to be, I guess, in a sense, a suppression of one to be objective and open-minded to new information. And, I tend to have a hard time articulating everything. And that's where being a member, I'm still learning and growing, and I learn from those around me. And so I just wanted to get that answer only because I want to educate as many people as possible. And um, this was something that came up today. And I'm like, wow, if I could just, maybe I have to dig a little deeper. Maybe I have to read everything, and reading is one of the biggest things when it comes to being a member. There's a lot of, reading
Well,
that goes
that
on.
was a great question.
Yeah,
It was a great question, and Andrea, you answered it so perfectly.
she did.
Uh, yeah, because these are the things about what you guys are doing that I want the audience to further understand, and hoping that maybe some will be enticed to learn more, to take action, to join you guys at the meetings. And I'm curious if for Greg and Andrea and yourself, Amanda, um, are there any updates or any points in what we've missed, that we haven't covered, that you'd like to share now? And I'll pass it to Greg and start with you.
As of the case, we're just waiting on their call for the case. But I just want to say to people listening, even if you're not considered being part of the du jour, just getting involved and knowing your rights. Freedom is like a muscle, and if we don't work it out, it atrophies. And it's very important that we understand that it's not just relinquished to the government. And you can learn this yourself. There's unsung heroes that I hold, my household holds in high regard, named Jack and Margie. They've been teaching this stuff for an individual level, meaning like not with a du jour, for your household to learn the rights, so you know the rights. So therefore, when you go out to the world, you have the right paradigm. You don't have the blue filter or the red filter. You're looking at the world through. This is the limitation of our government. Did they step out of their scope of authority or not? And once it becomes binary like that, you can actually see the game being played. And it doesn't matter if the red TV says something or the blue TV says something, for a fact that your government is out of the scope of the authority. And I think that's so important. A great way to get involved, honestly, is just reading the Constitution, starting with the Declaration of Independence. Read that piece of paper. It's so empowering. And you see right there, when the government goes rogue, it's our responsibility. So I would just encourage everybody listening today just to start with the Declaration of Independence, go to the First Amendment, learn the Bill of Rights, and from there see where it takes you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was on mute. That was a great response, Greg. Sorry. Andrea.
Sure. Just to piggyback off Fuzz, um, I know a lot of people, especially in modern times, don't want to rely on the Constitution because of who wrote it and what was happening at the time it was written. But keep in mind, society constantly evolves, mindsets constantly evolve, right? So what was socially acceptable at that time is not acceptable today. The same way it's not what was socially acceptable in the 50s does not fly today, right? You try to keep a woman home out of the workforce and beat her into submission, your butt's in jail. But that was the mindset in the 50s, okay? So just because the mindset back then was ignorant or misguided compared to today, please do not forsake what was written and can be used to empower and free yourselves today. That is the one thing I try to articulate because I've heard that so many times. I don't want to use the Constitution because it was written by white men who were slave owners. Because back in the 1700s, buddy, that was socially acceptable. Today, you're still involved in that same system. You're still a slave, just under a different title, and you're completely compliant. But we're not going to open your eyes to that yet because you're stuck on what was okay, not okay in your mindset in the 1700s. So, but it could have been written by a purple dinosaur. If you can use that document today to push back on them from encroaching on you, I would use it. I would use it, right? At this point in time, it is them versus us. And it's not them versus us regarding we the people, which side of the blue or red team we're on. It's not them versus us. Are we liberals? Are we Democrats? Are we Republicans? Are we independents? Are we black? Are we white? Are we rednecks? Are we, it's not that. It's we the people versus the government. That is the only line that is drawn. And that is the only border that is drawn. Okay. And every time they come up with an argument to try and point the finger at a different group of people, it's a tactic. Always keep in mind the government doesn't use anything unless it's been tried and true. Okay? So every time they point a finger and say they're the reason, they're the problem, look at those people. Look at the people that are pointing the finger. That's the problem, not who they're pointing at. Okay, so keep in mind also, because right now New York City is dealing with a slew of pointing fingers. We're getting fingers pointed at immigrants. We're getting fingers pointed at, drug users. We're having fingers pointed at mental health problems. We're having fingers pointed at high crime. Every time I hear that, I was asking, what is the difference between somebody that was born here and does a heinous crime versus that somebody that comes here and does a heinous crime? How is one less socially acceptable than the other? They're both criminals, and they should both be dealt with the same way, regardless of origin. And that's where people need to start realizing our government will make it socially acceptable for somebody that's born here to whether to traffic kids or to rape or to murder or to rob or to do whatever they do because they were born here. And we almost put them on a pedestal because they were here versus somebody comes here, does the same thing. Now all of a sudden they're the Antichrist. Look at who's pointing the finger. They're the ones creating the problem, and that's why they're offering the solution, because they're the ones that we need to be looking at. And with that, I yield.
Thank you. Great. I great. I have to say that this conversation today, you guys collectively have brought up things that I don't think I've ever spoken about. So I appreciate that. It just fills in the conversation a lot in a deeper way. Amanda.
I don't what to add, what's missing. I think they've touched base on everything. Um, Fuzz and Andrea. Um, the only thing missing is to, look into yourself. It starts with one. It starts with you. And, I've heard this a lot from the du jour, from Jeannie, from Andrea, from Scott, even Greg. It starts with you. You are more powerful than you think. You hold so much authority, and it's just about tapping into that, and to connect it even to, on a spiritual aspect. You've been given dominion and authority. That's not something, when it's written, and it's been written in the word, the living word. You have dominion over this earth. That's not a promise given to you that it just goes away. That's a solid promise, because anything that God says, it never returns void. um it's the same, it says in the word how the rain falls and the snow falls. It doesn't, form back again and go back up into the clouds. It's the same as the promises of God. So if you've been given dominion and authority here on this earth, well, it's time to use it. It's time to find out where that comes from, and it's time to find out how to attain it, and use it, and use it to bring glory and righteousness. And so there's no coincidence in a lot of the things that have occurred over the last 5 years, let alone over, the course of, this republic, this country, its existence, its history, its dark history, its ups and downs. There's no coincidence for a lot of those things, and the things that have occurred, um, and anything that you're able to pull from it, it's to reveal. And so I think that's what, we're, I think we're coming to a head with that. We're at the peak, and more will happen. But I think the more that comes down the line in the future, no matter what it is, there'll be more people who are aware this time. And, I see it on social media posts, especially, in regards to recent things like, the eggflation, the eggs, and the reasons behind shortages and things like that. And, people who I'm sure probably didn't say much 5 years ago when we were, unlawfully imprisoned in our homes. Um, they probably didn't say anything, but they're saying something now, because the foolishness has been revealed. you know Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And people are becoming more aware. So, I think the main thing to drive home at this point is to just know who you are. And if anyone pays attention even to the agendas that are being pushed at this point, it's to strip identity. You think of politics, you think of religion, you think of, are you a boy, are you a girl, I don't want to be a man, I want to be all these things that have to do with identity. Because if your identity can be tapped into, manipulated, indoctrinated, and then ultimately stolen from you, well, then you can be pushed to be whatever they, and whoever they will be, whatever they want you to be, rather than who you've been created to be, where a document has solidified that and acknowledged it. You are endowed by the creator, your creator, with unalienable rights and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is not a coincidence that now that's something that for centuries have been under attack. However, the I guess you could say the agenda has now gained steroids, and it's on just this high impact. It's like ready to crash out, right? How they say crashing out. They're ready to crash out with this stuff, because they need to gain and manipulate and pull the wool over the eyes of as many people as they can, because ultimately the power is in the individual. The promise is in the individual. The authority and the dominion over this earth is in the individual. And if you can alter that, the mindset, get the distraction on other things, hey, it's been won. The battle of your life, what you do, your freedoms has been won once they can steal your identity. So I encourage those, learn as much as you can, while books are available, while paper is available, while history is available, because they're rewriting that, destroying, omitting, removing. Learn as much as you can, but also instill in yourself your identity. Who are you? And the number one seed that you can start to water and grow with. I have authority. I have authority. No man gave it to me. No man can take it away. Even though that's a reference to the joy and happiness that you are given as well from the Lord, no man can give it, no man can take it away. So walk in your authority, walk in your power, and start to take back this domain, because the dominion over this domain is yours.
Thank you. All right. At this time, I'd like to move on to any announcements anybody may have on any realm that or an event that might be coming up, and also closing comments. I'd just like to add before I move this on, I'd like to share this quote that I meant to open up with, but I want to say it now. The world is so empty if one thinks only of mountains, rivers, and cities, but to know someone who thinks and feels with us and who, though distant, is close to us in spirit, this makes the earth for us an inhabited garden. And, a lot of you guys are part of that garden for me. So I my heart always feels full after we share these spaces every Monday. Um, any closing comments or events coming up, Andrea?
Not 100% sure about events. I'm going to punt that one to Joy or and Fuzz. However, um, for anybody that wishes to learn, right, I highly recommend, if you can, get an app that'll take these amazing works of facts and foundations into an audiobook. You will save your eyesight and you'll be able to take it wherever you need to go. That for me has been a lifesaver when I put that app on my phone, because some of the books we've had to read and research were 300 to 600 pages each. So it's a lot easier to put in a headset and listen to it while you're multitasking 60,000 things. You know.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good tip. Thank you. Craig?
Yeah, there's no events. If I just wanted to give you your flowers, Ra, that you've been doing great work, just shining a light on this movement. I was going through some old pictures, and you're in the background in all the pictures. We've been side by side for so long, all of us guys, and I have nothing but great memories and the connection, right? The connection that we all made in those tough times in New York. We try to tell people outside of New York that didn't go through these mandates, but they have no idea what we all stood and went through together. And I know I will always cherish and remember those moments. And I just love what you're doing, Ra. And if you need anything at all, time, talent, or treasure, I'm here for you, my sister. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love you guys. And aquí siempre, always a space for you guys here on what we do and share. Joy, would you be able, with any closing comment that you'll be adding, can you also close us out with a prayer? So with that, I'll make my final comments, and then you'll close out the space if you're okay with that.
It'll be an honor.
Okay. So let me just say, guys, every Monday we're here, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We host things that have to do with New York. We cover New York updates, news, and we have spotlight guests like the special conversation that we just shared tonight. So please stay connected with all things Cafecito Break. We post every day on Instagram. Cafecito Break 10.0. My sister and I have a show on YouTube called Spicy Spirituality. It's just the sisters talking about our journey and sharing it from that perspective. And lastly, if any of you um, like to join our Substack, cafecitobreak.org. All right, Joy.
Thank you. Just like Andrea and Fuzz, no events right now. Our next public open call will be on the 20th of February at 8 p.m. So you can go to nydujour.info for the link. It'll also be up right before that time. So look out, on their social medias, on Du Jour's social medias, on Wednesday, usually Wednesday evening, but definitely Thursday for the link as well. So you can go to their Instagram, you can come to Twitter here, and that information will be posted. So our next open public call will be on the 20th of February of this month at 8 p.m. Um, and I guess I'll just, close it out. It honestly is a true honor to be able to do that and to just, encourage people in peace and in the grace that's bestowed to us, from the Father. So, oof, mm. Father God, in your name, Yahweh, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for this space. I thank you for the lives uh, who are here listening, who are in earshot of this, who have participated, the hosts, and the different men and women who are here with their stories that they've spoken on and different things that they may not have spoken on. But Lord, you know them. You know their hearts. You know their struggles. You know their battles, their victories. And I just want to thank you, Lord. I want to give you the honor and praise that you deserve for all that you have done for us, for the freedoms that you have given us, for the knowledge and the wisdom that you instill in us, that you give us the discernment and continue to cover us and protect us. I ask right now for healing for those who may be feeling ill or who are suffering from any kind of infirmity, that you just bring healing upon them right now, Lord. I thank you. I thank you for your healing power. It's already been declared, it's already been written that by your stripes we are healed. And I thank you. I thank you for all that you do. I thank you for keeping us. I thank you for keeping us on this walk and this journey together. Anything that we are going through emotionally, anything that we are suffering from, that you take that away, because you already know. You know what's on our hearts. You know what we've seen. You know what we've been through. You're just waiting for us to speak to you. And I encourage those that are here to just open up and just speak. It doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be written well. That we just come to you with all that we are grieving with and that we are heavy burdened with, that load be taken off of us. For your burden is lighter. Let us give it all to you. I thank you again for this amazing time together with my brothers and sisters here. It's been an incredible experience, and I look forward to growing more. And I ask all of this, let all this praise go forward to you. In your mighty name, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Joy. God bless you. God bless everyone here in this space tonight and all your families. And deep bow to all of you. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of the week. God bless you.